Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be talking all about Ben Folds.
Oh, cool.
You're clearly a fan. You want to know what's up with this 2025 tour that he's got coming up.
Right.
But then there's this other thing. He just stepped down from a pretty important position, so
Yeah,
we got to talk about that too.
absolutely.
So we've got this really exciting tour launch happening, but at the same time, this resignation seems, based on principle. And it's like we get this little peek behind the curtain at how art and politics and personal values, they all kind of get mixed up together.
Yeah. And it's interesting, it's not often you see these two sort of contrasting things happening at the same time in an artist's career.
Yeah, right. So let's start with the fun stuff, okay?
Okay.
This tour kicks off March 18th and 19th
Okay.
in Kansas City
Right.
with him playing alongside the symphony.
Wow.
What a way to start.
That's an interesting choice, right? I mean, like a symphony orchestra backing Ben Folds suggests maybe he's looking to expand his sound a little bit, experiment with some new arrangements.
I was thinking the same thing. It's not just a one-off. This tour is going all over the U.S., ending December 2nd in Portland.
Cool.
And what I think is really cool is he's doing this mix of solo shows and orchestral collaborations.
Right.
So there's something for everybody, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we can't forget about the return of the paper airplane request tour.
Oh, yeah.
Fans write down requests on paper airplanes and throw them up on stage. It's become like a signature part of his live shows.
Okay, so that sounds like a lot of fun. But I've heard about this. Is it more than just a gimmick?
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I think about it in a typical concert, an artist has a set list, and that's what you get. But with these paper airplanes, Folds is giving up a little bit of control.
Right.
It's this unpredictable interactive element.
Yeah.
He's literally catching these requests mid-performance.
So it really breaks down that wall between the artist and the audience, right? He's like
Yeah.
engaging with them on their terms.
Exactly. And it's not just about playing the requested songs. It's about that moment of surprise, that shared experience. He might riff on a request. He might tell a story about it. He might weave it into another song. It turns the entire concert into this unique collaborative event.
I bet those shows are incredible to see live.
Yeah.
And speaking of connecting with fans, he's hitting, the big cities like Detroit, Milwaukee, Chicago, but he's also playing some smaller towns like Johnson City, Tennessee, and Marietta, Ohio.
Huh. That's an interesting point. It's not the typical routing you see from a lot of artists.
Right.
It suggests maybe that he's not just chasing, the biggest crowds or, the biggest venues.
So what do you think is the strategy there? Is it maybe to reach a broader audience or maybe to reconnect with his roots?
I think it could be a little bit of both. I think it could be a way of acknowledging that his fan base isn't just concentrated in major metropolitan areas. And there is a certain intimacy, that comes with playing those smaller venues and creating, a different kind of connection with the audience.
It's almost like he's saying, I haven't forgotten about you guys out there who, can't make it to those big arena shows.
Precisely. It speaks to a certain authenticity and a desire to make his music accessible to everyone, regardless of where they live.
Okay, but we can't ignore the elephant in the room here. This resignation as artistic advisor to the National Symphony Orchestra at the Kennedy Center.
Right. That was a pretty big statement.
Yeah. So let's just break down what happened.
Okay.
Okay.
Former President Trump became chairman of the Kennedy Center board and, pretty quickly got rid of 18 board members and, appointed his own people.
Right.
And then he, criticized some of the programming, calling it woke and terrible, even though he admitted he hadn't seen any of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a highly controversial move. And, it created a lot of tension right away within the arts community because a lot of people felt that he was trying to, impose his own personal views, his own political views on what's historically been a nonpartisan institution.
And Ben Folds was clearly not having it.
Yeah. His Instagram post was short, but it said a lot. He wrote, "Given the developments at the Kennedy Center effective today, I am resigning as artistic advisor to the NSO. Not for me."
Yeah, it was powerful, especially in how brief it was. Clearly he felt that the Kennedy Center was no longer a place where he could contribute his talents.
And he wasn't alone, right?
No.
Other prominent figures like Shonda Rhimes and Renee Fleming also resigned. It was like a mass exodus.
Exactly. It sent shockwaves through the arts world. And, this wasn't just, a couple individuals disagreeing with a particular decision. It was a collective rejection of what was seen as, this dangerous move to bring politics into the arts.
So many people resigning this feels bigger than just one event.
It is. The situation goes beyond Ben Folds or the Kennedy Center. It highlights this much larger issue, that's been brewing for a while, this tension between artistic freedom and political influence.
Right? Like, what is the role of art in society? Is it meant to reflect what's happening or challenge it? Where do we draw the line between creative expression and political commentary?
Those are huge questions, and there aren't any easy answers. And it's interesting to think about the fact that, this debate isn't new throughout history. Artists have been at the forefront of social and political movements. They've used their work to challenge norms, spark conversations, and inspire change.
True. Look at protest songs from the 60s or the politically charged street art that, popped up during different social justice movements.
Exactly. Art has this power to give a voice to the voiceless, to challenge authority, to make people think differently about the world, and sometimes that makes people in power uncomfortable.
So, in a way, Ben Folds resigning is part of a long tradition of artists pushing back against attempts to control or censor their expression.
I think so. It's about standing up for the integrity of art and its role in making us think critically and pushing for social change.
And the fact that this happened at the Kennedy Center makes it even more significant.
Hmm.
This isn't some small underground arts group. It's supposed to represent the best of American culture and creativity.
Absolutely. It's a national symbol. So when someone like Ben Folds, who's been appointed to a prominent position there, decides to leave, it makes a huge statement.
His decision carries a lot of weight. It goes beyond just his personal beliefs. It says something about the values we as a society place on art and its role in our lives.
It forces us to ask, what kind of society do we want? One where art is free to express itself without censorship or political pressure, or one where art is used to promote a specific agenda?
And it's not just a theoretical question either. Decisions made at places like the Kennedy Center have real consequences for artists, for arts organizations, and for the people who experience their work.
They determine what art gets funded, what art gets shown, what art the public gets to see. It shakes the entire cultural landscape.
So Ben Folds resigning is like this call to action. It reminds us that we're all part of this conversation. We need to be engaged in this discussion about art's role in our society and the importance of protecting artistic freedom.
And that's where you, the listener, come in. This isn't just a story about Ben Folds. It's a story about the power of art, the importance of artistic integrity, and the choices we make as individuals and as a society.
So we have this contrast. Ben Folds, the artist, is hitting the road, connecting with fans, celebrating his music. And then we have Ben Folds, the individual, taking a stand, making a statement about his values. And it might even spark this larger conversation about the role of art in a world that's increasingly divided.
That duality, that tension between creating and standing by your convictions is what makes this story so interesting. It reminds us that artists aren't just entertainers. They're citizens. They think they act. Their choices, both on and off the stage, can affect the world.
As you go see Ben Folds on tour, or as you think about his decision to leave the Kennedy Center, remember this. You're not just seeing a musician perform. You're seeing a human being grapple with complex issues and using his platform to make a statement.
And that is art at its most powerful. It's not just about beautiful things or catchy tunes. It's about engaging with the world, challenging what we think we know, and starting conversations.
Wow. I am blown away. This deep dive went way beyond a tour update and a resignation. We dug into what it means to be an artist today.
That's what these explorations are all about. We start with something seemingly straightforward, and suddenly we're uncovering layers of meaning and connection that we never expected.
I need a minute to process all of this.
Take your time. Let these ideas sink in. That's where real learning happens, when we reflect and connect the dots in our own way.
Okay, my brain is like doing backflips over here. So where do we go from here? We've covered the tour, the resignation, the whole big picture of art and politics. What does all this mean for you listening right now?
That's a real challenge, isn't it? How do we take all this information, all these insights, and make them relevant to our own lives?
I'm thinking about how we as fans, experience art. Do we just sit back and enjoy it? Or do we have a responsibility to think more critically about, the message, the artist's choices?
I don't think it has to be one or the other.
Yeah.
We can absolutely appreciate a work of art's beauty and skill while also, engaging with what it's trying to say,
Yeah.
its context, its potential impact.
Like with Ben Folds' music, right? You can just bop along to those catchy tunes.
Yeah.
But if you really listen to the lyrics, the arrangements, how he performs it, there are layers of meaning there that might surprise you.
Exactly. That's where things get really exciting when we move beyond just passively listening or watching and we become active participants, in the artistic experience when we let ourselves be challenged, be provoked, see the world in a new way.
This whole thing with the Kennedy Center really made me think about artistic freedom. You know, it's easy to take it for granted, but what Ben Folds did reminds us that it's a fragile thing. It's something that needs protecting, nurturing, constantly defending.
And that defense starts with each of us. It starts with supporting those artists who are pushing boundaries, challenging the status quo, those who refuse to be silenced. It starts with having these open and honest conversations about art's role in society, even when it gets uncomfortable.
When you really boil it down, art is a reflection of who we are as individuals, as a society. It's a mirror showing us our good sides, our bad sides, our hopes, our anxieties.
And sometimes looking in that mirror can be unsettling. It might make us question what we believe, confront our biases, deal with some tough truths, but that's also where art's power lies.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Ben Folds, I want to leave you with this. Don't just be a consumer of art. Be an advocate for it. Be a champion for artistic freedom. And most importantly, be a part of that ongoing conversation about how art shapes our world.
Because in a world that's increasingly dominated by algorithms, by sound bites, by instant gratification, we need art more than ever. We need its power to connect us, inspire us, challenge us, and remind us of what it means to be human.
That is the perfect note to end on. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. Until next time.